Alright guys, hi. I am here with your last story from this Good Old Days book from May and June 2014. We have completely went through the book of the stories I thought you guys would enjoy. And this is the last one. And it's by Donna McGuire Tanner. And it's called The Field Trip. It was an unforgettable 5th grade experience with an extra dollar to spend. And you can see the picture of the kids on the field trip and their info. There. Alright, so let's begin the story. It was the end of a very long school year for our 5th grade class in May 1959. The trip was a tradition, and we had been planning it for an entire year. At Pax Elementary School in the tiny town of Pax, West Virginia. Every other year, the 5th grade and 6th grade classes made a field trip to our state capital in Charleston. Each of us students was required to bring $1 to cover the cost of gas for the school bus, the West Virginia Turnpike fee, and 10 cents for a bottle of soda. We would each receive a drink with our packed lunch. $1 does not seem like much in today's world, but during the 1950s, it was a chunk out of a family's budget. My father was a coal miner, so I was reluctant to ask for an entire dollar. Luckily for me, though, my older brother Danny had gone the same trip, so my father had prepared to give me the money. The day finally arrived. I had to leave home earlier than usual, so my father had to drive me and a neighborhood boy, Wayne Foster, to school. As I was going out the door, my mother handed me my brown paper lunch bag and an extra dollar bill to spend on anything I wanted. I felt amazed and rich. More than 60 students and 2 teachers, Mrs. Dixon and Mrs. Dillon, crowded onto the school bus. We had all picked a buddy we had to be with at all times. I had chosen my best friend, Judy Hamilton. Only one student refused to go. I will call him Joe. We figured his family did not have the money, but we knew the teachers would provide it. But Joe was nowhere in sight. We were on a schedule and did not have time to dilly-dally around. The bus was driven by our regular driver, Jack Moore. He had made this trip many times. A mile or so down the road, Mrs. Dixon asked him to stop in front of Joe's house, so he did and honked his horn. But the missing student never came out, and we could not wait. Soon we were headed to our destination on the West Virginia Turnpike. The bus was very loud with noisy excitement until we noticed that it was raining. Then we all quieted down. The day was ruined. We knew we were going into a tunnel that recently had been opened. We sat up to watch the lights as we passed through. We saw light at the end of the tunnel as we drove out into the clear. We were showered with sunshine and no rain. In one loud voice we sang the song, Heavenly Sunshine. Those rays of happiness stayed with us all day. We had so many places we wanted to visit. We hardly knew where to start. Although I had been born in Charleston, I had never lived there. I had visited several times with my father when I was required trip for drivers to buy new car license plates in June of each year at the Capitol building. But this trip was different. I was seeing it through the eyes of many students who had never been to the city, especially there. Our first stop was the Morris Harvey College, now the University of Charleston. We made a quick tour of the building. Not being too impressed, we hurried until we got through. We laughed when one of the boys said, "At least I can say I have been through college." We stepped outside and looked across the Canal River. In one combined gasp, we stood looking at what is probably the most beautiful Capitol building in the country. Its golden dome glistened in the sunlight. We quickly took our places on the bus so we could be driven to that beautiful structure. Once inside, the wonderment was glowing on our faces. Downstairs was a museum. Behind glass were dresses that the state's first ladies had worn. The boys pressed their noses against glass to get a better look at old Civil War guns. Next on the schedule was the Coca-Cola bottling plant. We watched as the bottles were sterilized in hot, sudsy water and filled with the delicious dark fluid. Before we left the building, each of us was given a small replica of a Coca-Cola bottle. Then we were off to a bakery. I remember seeing giant pans of dough put into large ovens. The smell made us hungry. Next was a dairy processing place, where we saw how dairy products were made. When I turned around, I saw some of the boys playing in the cottage cheese tubs with their hands. We were behind schedule when we stopped for lunch at the park. Most of us stayed on the bus to eat while the teachers purchased the soda. I had ordered a strawberry drink. For me, it was a treat, since my family had soda only on Saturdays. After we rested, we made one last stop at the Charleston airport. Most of us had watched airplanes take off and land at a small airport near the town of Beckley, but this was different. This was a commercial airport with large planes. At the airplane gift shop, I was able to spend some of my dollar on several postcards, which I still have today. At last, it was time to start our journey home. Most of the students slept, if they could claim a seat. Some of the boys had made seats out of soda pop crates because the bus was so crowded. On the trip back home, they traded the crates with other boys just to have a soft place to finish their trip. When we arrived at the schoolyard, the sun was going down. Some of the parents were waiting in the cars. Since my father worked second shift, my neighbor and I had to walk home the 2 miles down the railroad tracks. As we walked, we talked about all the events of the day and how poor Joe had missed it all. I knew we would never forget that field trip. I was thinking they was going to see Joe there, or he was going to make it. It's kind of sad that he didn't, isn't it? But that sounds like an awesome school field trip. We went on a lot of field trips when I was in school, when I was in elementary school. But nothing like this. That sounds cool, going to all those different places like that, especially the Coca-Cola company. I would have liked to have seen that. That'd been awesome. And a museum. I've never been to a museum before. I think that would be really cool. I'd love to go there. So, I thought this was a good story for our last story from this magazine. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Bye, guys.